This is the video that's going to explain the HTML templates for the Flask website. Last year you did some HTML and you learned about tags and links and adding images, and this is all pretty basic HTML. This is the home page, and so the home page has a body and it has 3 H2 headings in it, and each of them have a link, add new animal, which has a link that goes to the /enter new page, and list of animals, which goes to /list, and reset the whole database, which goes to /reset. I don't recommend you leave this line in here when you hand your database in. It's just useful at the moment when you're building your database and getting the number of fields right and working out what fields you need and being able to clean out the dodgy data and start it again. This is the result HTML, and it basically has this line here, which takes a message which gets sent when the template is open. So if we go back to main.py and look for results, it happens after we've actually inserted the animal. So render the template result and make message equal to MSG. So MSG equal to MSG. And this MSG is the one that comes from this code here. So I can call it MSG1 to stop the confusion. I think it's defined right at the top, MSG1. So we've got MSG1 defined, and then here it has record added, successfully added, put inside it, and here it's got error in insert operation put inside it. Whatever happens there, it passes that code through to the result HTML, and that's what this curly brace, MSG, curly brace means. So it's going to put all of that text there. So if we go to list of animals, whoops, so add a new animal. Give it a diet, give it a habitat, make it a vertebrate, and submit. You'll see this record successfully added. That's come from here. So the record was successfully added, and so the MSG was updated to record successfully added. Okay, having a look at reset. That's going to do a similar thing. The result of the reset was, and then give you a link that goes back to the home page. And then we have the 2 pages that do the most work. So let's have a look at list first. List is a table. So table has a border of 1, which is really ugly. You're welcome to change that. Has a border of 1, has a header, which is just text. And so this is what, if I go to list of animals, this is what this bit is. Scientific name, common name, diet, habitat, vertebrate. And if I change that to has a vertebra, and then I go to list of animals, you'll see that that has updated. So I can change all of this myself. I don't like has a vertebra. And then underneath that we have the 3 animals that are found in the animal database. And down here, this is looping through the set of rows that get sent to it. So if we go back to main.py, when this page is called, it's called list. Here we are. It's called here. We connect to the database. We use a row factory. You're just going to have to trust me that you need it. It's how we can recognize a row by its field name rather than by its position, which is much easier. Get the cursor that we need, execute a select statement, pretty basic select statement, and then fetch all of them. And so just like in the MSG above, this could be called rows 1, and then we're saying pass through the variable rows, which is now made equal to the variable rows 1 from here. So when we go to list, you'll see that it brings in the variable rows, and then it does for row in rows, which means it's looping through all of those rows. And row scientific name. So this is what I meant by referring to the field of the record by name rather than by address. So scientific name, common name, diet, habitat, vertebrate is really useful to be able to use that text. And then we have an end for, which isn't normal for Python, but is necessary in this template for Flask. And then there's a link that allows us to go back to the home page, which is just the address / in HTTP, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is what is making the web run. / means go to this whole address here without any folders after it. So that's how we know we're going home. Okay, so this is a bit of a complex page because there's a table and there's a looping through the rows that have been returned to it. But I think you'll get used to this because we only have to style this once. And then the animal page, which is probably more complex than you generally did in year 9, I've given you some sample code that you can use. So if we go to add a new animal, I may have killed my page. So here we are on the add a new animal page, and so this here, this rectangle, is what's called an input box. And so you have an input, it's a type text, and it has a name. You have to give it a name so that we can refer to it later. And then there are 2, these are called line breaks, and there are 2 of those before we get to the common name. So 1 would take it down to the next line, and the next one takes it to a line below that. And then we have common name, which has a text box here, which is this text box here, and it has the name CN. We have diet, and diet is interesting because it is a select box. It's very good practice when you're doing database work to limit the amount of errors the user can make, because they're going to make some. So this limits the amount of errors the user can make by giving them a limited number of things they can choose. So rather than just choosing, typing anything there, which makes it very difficult when we're trying to get data out to make sure we know that it's herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore. If you remember the first Fleet database, there was a whole lot of messy data in there. So this is keeping our data nice and neat. It can only be one of those 4 options: blank, herbivore, carnivore, omnivore. The reason I leave a blank here is because that means there's no default value. So lots of errors happen when if you leave this off and then the default value is herbivore. Let me do that. Okay, and add a new animal, you'll see this herbivore is now the thing that's selected when you go there. So if you don't change that value, then it is going to be a herbivore. And the problem with that is that can mean that you get a lot of false herbivores where somebody couldn't be bothered changing the value, and so everything ends up being a herbivore. And so rather than do that, I'd rather have a blank there so that when people are lazy, they get nothing as the diet rather than everything being a herbivore. And the same thing is the case for the habitat. And so this is a select, it has an ID, it has a name, and then there are a whole bunch of options. And then finally, I've shown you how to do a checkbox. So here we have an input type. Now, this is a little bit tricky. The checkbox has to have two possible values. One is hidden and the other isn't. So what can happen is that when you check it, you want it to pass through the value true, and when you don't check it, you want it to pass through a value. If you don't have this hidden one, then it means that when they don't check it, it doesn't pass through anything at all. So that's why I have two versions of the input checkbox, both named vert. So when this one is ticked, it overwrites this one, but when it isn't ticked, it means we get the false coming through. And then we have a submit button, and when it submits, it does this thing. This is the action of the form. So it takes the URL for the add record, which is something we pass through as a value, and it uses the method post. There are two methods in HTTP, which is what we're using as the protocol for the web. One is get, which means I just got information from somewhere, and one is post, which means I'm pushing information to somewhere. And so this is post because we're submitting it. You could use a get. We might do that next term when we get into more advanced stuff. When you're doing the list here of animals, you could actually have it get information from the browser to say that they particularly want to order by diet or order by common name. We could do that here. And that would be with a get method. We're using the post method, which is passing that information on. So let's go find out what URL for addrec is. So addrec is, I find it, this function. So you have to keep it called addrec, or if you don't keep it called addrec, then you have to go and change that form method. So if you look here, URL for addrec means that it's pasting it to this URL, which is addrec, and with the method post. So that goes to addrec, and the addrec function does all of the work. And I'll talk about the Python and the database code in the next video.